Well, guys, what's up? What's going on out there today? Yes, it is Brent Abel here, webtennis.com. Another episode of the January 2025 Daily Fundy, as in fundamentals. And all month, we're working on this truth bomb that mastering fundamentals of the game of tennis, that's the advanced stuff. There's nothing else past that, right? And I used to think way back in the day when I was working with Tom Stowe, the great, legendary Northern California tennis coach. I thought we'd work on some stuff in the beginning and then we'd really get into the advanced stuff. And I asked him about that one day and he kind of said, What? No, Mr. Abel, mastering the fundamentals of the game is the advanced stuff because once you spend the time really getting these fundamentals grounded, really grooved into your game, you then become an insanely consistent shot maker. And when you do that, when you are the guy over there that's making the fewest unforced errors, right, are choosing really having great shot choice clarity based on the strengths and the average and the weakness of whatever your opponent brings to the match on that day, you got great shot clarity. So anyway, guys, look, before we get into today's episode, which is the three keys for your overhead's power, right? So we can really thump this overhead. I've got three things for you. Actually, maybe 3.5 things for you. But before we get into that, look, if you've not yet checked out my course, the 5 Mini Mindset Skills Training 28-day course, where I take you by the hand on a daily basis, with getting you to really get good with disciplining yourself to these 5 mini. Anyone can do this 5 mini mindset skills for mental toughness. And look, if you're playing tight, get nervous, anxious, the confidence code for mental toughness is simply built off the court first. And once you do that, then you can start to take it out to the court and start to win. Right down below, there's a link. When we're done today, if you've not yet checked out the course, be sure to do so. For the rest of the month, January 2025, I've got it at more than the 50% discount to incentivize you to let's get to work on some of the mental skills of the game. Guys, until then, look, there's three things. I mentioned three and a half things um, about how to get more power on your overhead. And the first thing is, as soon as you, as soon as your brain says, "Oh, there's a lob going up," first thing I do is I assume it's going to be deep. What I used to do is I kind of turn my shoulders, stand there for that nanosecond, trying to gauge the depth of what this lob was going to be. And more often than not, it was going to be deeper than what I could really get back on. And so I would be getting back at the last second, and there's just no power as you're kind of falling backwards on this thing. So, what works for me, number one, to get more power is I just assume it's going to be deep, right? I assume it. So I instantly take off and I never back up. I never literally back up. I always turn the shoulders. I always go side to side with the footwork because I've seen way too many times where guys back up and boom, they trip, they go back, and the back of the head seems to be the first thing to hit. Not a pretty sight. And any lesson that I'm giving, any coaching I'm giving on court with the overhead, if that student backs up, doesn't turn and goes side to side, we stop. And I say, the next time you do that, we're done. We're just not going to work on this anymore because the risk is too great. So make sure that thing number one of getting more power is that when you assume it's going to be a deep lob, that you go back instantly, turning your shoulders, getting your racket in the position that you want for the overhead, and side to side scoot back. Now, what I do is I like to go back further than what I need to so that I can put on the brakes and then be able to make, at least a half step coming forward to be able to get some body weight moving forward to get a bigger swing speed, but to also reclaim the net position. I've always thought that the overhead, when you're pushed back, it's the whole purpose is to regain your net position. And the best way to do that is to get back a little bit too far and then step forward. And yeah, you'll get much better racket speed, a lot better power. But as you do that, you also reclaim your net position. Thing number two is that you got to relax your hand on the grip. Look, I mean, too often we get really grippy, really tight, get too much tension on the grip, and that just slows down racket speed. I mean, it feels like we ought to muscle it up a little bit so the stronger, but that just doesn't work. Maybe it's a little counterintuitive, but when you relax your grip, you actually get more racket speed, and that racket speed is what creates power. So you want to make sure that thing two is that once you've gotten thing one done, you're further back than you need to be. Your hand is now relaxed, um, and and so that you're going to get more racket speed with the combination of stepping forward along with a nice light grip for being able to get swing speed. Part 2B, that was 2A. 2B is that you've got to have a target in mind, right? And I don't want you looking out at the landscape as the ball's up there, obviously. But at some point you go up, you're looking at the ball, you're looking at the lob, and you've got to pick out a target and just totally commit to it now and then just trust it. You can't stop those guys over there from guessing or anticipating where you're going to play your overhead. And, unlike maybe a ground stroke where you could sort of out of your peripheral get an idea if they were moving one way or the other to anticipate where you're going to go. On the overhead, you can't do that because you're looking up. So if you've got no idea what they're doing over there, and that's okay, as long as you totally commit to your target. And I wouldn't go through a whole big sub menu of different targets. I typically go with my first instinct. Whatever that target is that pops in my brain, that's it. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to 100% commit to it and trust it. Sure, it might come back. I don't care how big an overhead you have. You can't stop those guys from anticipating where it's going to go. And if it comes back, like we've always said, that's okay. Whatever comes back, we'll just take it from there. So that's to be. Now, the third thing that you got to make sure that you do to get the power is I think too often our instincts are we want to pull the ball's coming down and we want to pull it back down into the court. And when we do that, things don't work out. I mean, if we're too early on that, the ball goes straight down in the net. If we're too late on pulling down, it seems to sail deep. What I've found that works the best is from my setup position, um, as if you've tossed, right? As if it's kind of like you're in that serve tossing motion finish position. Is that I reach up. I reach up initially with my racket shoulder to get going up into the ball. And if you're relaxed in the grip, like we talked about with 2A, or I should say with 2B, is your hand naturally just snaps through it. Your wrist snaps through it. And you're not going to, because you're reaching up with the shoulder does not mean that you're going to sky the ball over the fence over there. So those are the three things that create power on your overhead, whether it's singles or whether it's doubles. And you got to practice this stuff, right? The first thing I would practice is get a guy out there to throw some lobs up to you and don't do anything more. Don't try to get all three of these kind of working together where you're consciously thinking about all three things. Let's do one at a time. And the first one obviously is going to be your footwork, getting the shoulders to react to the lob going up by turning into a full shoulder turn position so you're sideways to the net and sidestepping backwards, right? See how far you can get. And look, if it's a really deep lob, obviously you can't get all the way back on that. If it's a deep lob, it's a deep lob. That's fine. But if it's relatively, I'm not going to say short, but if it's maybe a foot or two behind the service line, yeah, you ought to be able to get back far enough to where you could really gauge the depth as you're moving backwards, and then be able to take a little bit, put on the brakes, and then take a little step forward and get the power on that. Start with that first. And that really solves a lot of your problems with getting power on the overhead, is getting a little bit too far back and then stepping forward and then just unloading. Guys, hope this has been helpful. I want to hear your comments or read your comments down below in the comments area. Comments or questions, feedbacks, remark, whatever's on your mind, let me know. I'd love to read your stuff and respond. Might take me a day or two to get to it, but that's cool. I will. I promise to get to it. And look, as we talked about at the very top, the 5 mini mindset skills course that I've got, a 28-day training course, normally $197 for the rest of the month, January 2025, during our Fundy, our daily Fundies. Just 77 bucks. You can get into the course, uh, of the which includes all of the bonuses as well. So right down below, there's a link. Click it and check it out, get inside, and let's get started with building that mental toughness that you got to do it off the court first. All right, guys. Hope this has been helpful today. As always, it's time we got to get out there. We got to help someone else have a spectacular day. Guys, I'll see you again next time.